Do you want to know what's going round? See what's the talk of the town on Real Talk on the radio today.
And welcome to Real Talk Radio 97.5. You're listening to WKDW Radio, the emergency broadcasting network for the city of Northport. A special shout out to our sponsors, Remax Palm Realty, located in Venice and in Port Charlotte, 2 locations. Lions Title, located in the greater Northport area on Toledo Blade. And also Allstate. Allstate with the Hardin Insurance Group, also located on Toledo Blade. Very special shout out to them for sponsoring the radio station and being an active participant in the emergency broadcasting network for the citizens of Northport, Florida. Very special guest in the house today. Mr. It's Mr. at times, Scott Titus, our chief, and our beloved chief of the Northport Fire Department. How you doing there?
I'm great, John. Thank you so much to your sponsors, and thank you to you for having me on the show again. And it's an honor to be here and represent all the fine men and women in the Northport Fire Rescue.
You know, I threw a couple texts out to some representatives and big active people on my show and very supportive. I think I want to start out with the one thing that I think this time of year always rings true, which is checking your fire alarms. I know that we've lost dear friends. We had at Twisted Fork, we had a really dear friend who did not have fire alarms, and it was this month that happened and it occurred, and that was a year ago. So we brought last year in with having to talk about the effect of not having those systems in play. Can you, I know we're going into the holiday, but I want to start this out the right way because I think we're going to go into a tree demonstration in a second. And I think this is a great intro in. So kudos to Robin for bringing that up and giving me chills up my arm to start this out because it made me remember last year. But can you kind of highlight that and move on from there?
Yeah. And I remember that fire last year, John, and I know how connected he was to the community and how many people at the time. And it was a tragic loss and a tragic accident. And, you know, when we talk about these things, we don't ever want, you know, anybody to place blame or think about that. But, you know, the one thing that we preach all the time is, you know, check your smoke detectors. It's something that a lot of people take for granted. And we don't know whether or not in this case that would have made a difference, but we know potentially it could have. And so, you know, we want to try and remove, do as much as we can that's within our control to try and, you know, increase not only our own chances, but the chances of the people that we care about, the chances of the people in the community to, you know, to escape and survive if in the event that a fire were to occur, especially, you know, while we're sleeping. So some people are heavy sleepers, you know, some people have go out on a Friday night and have a couple of cocktails and makes them a heavier sleeper. And, you know, there's all kinds of reasons. And, you know, that's just one more thing that we can do to help ourselves get early notification. And so I'm sure you have, you know, everybody that's listening has heard it so many times, you know, change your clocks, change your smoke detector batteries. And the recommendation has always been, you know, change those batteries twice a year. That's changing a little bit in time now, I can tell you. So most of the newer smoke detectors, so homes being built now, or if you go buy new smoke detectors, they actually come now with 10-year batteries. So if you look at the data manufacturer, it's in a sealed system. And they're good for 10 years. But if you have older detectors in your house, it's still something that you should be thinking about when you change your clocks. If there's a battery backup system on them, you can get a little more time out of them, but we just recommend, you know, doing it anyway, even though that electrical backup there is really keeping it from draining the battery. It's it's a 9-volt battery. It costs,
Is there,
nothing when you think about.
is there a time frame that smoke detectors should just be replaced? Is there like a 10-year shelf life on those consistently?
Yeah, the average shelf life is 10 years, and you can check, manufacturer's recommendations. So most people that have smoke detectors in their homes don't have the material or the booklet that came with them anymore, but they can pull it down, look at it. They can look it up online. But I will say, as an industry standard, most of them are were manufactured with the intent that they would be 10 years. So there's a lot of homes that are relatively new. They're 10, 11, 12 years old, and people really don't think about it. But it's probably time to start thinking about replacing your detectors. And when you replace one or have one problematic, you really should replace all of them in your home, especially if they are hardwired and run in series, because it's important that all the detectors that you buy come from that same batch, that same manufacturer, so that they work in conjunction with each other and don't have any issues. So one of the things that we don't do is we don't replace smoke detectors for people that have working smoke detectors, only because it involves electrical wiring. We don't want to contribute to a hazard or a problem. Chamber has been wonderful in helping us refer some people to some electricians or some handymen that can do that if it's something that you want to do in your home. But we absolutely recommend that people do that. And if you have an older home that is not hardwired, then you definitely should be changing your batteries twice a year when you change your clocks, and checking them weekly. And, a lot of the older homes, the codes were different. Some older homes that you find here in Northport, they only have, one detector in the house. And sometimes, it's not a bad recommendation to have more than that.
Can you talk about the carbon monoxide side of things? And I know that technology is actually advanced now to a completely different level than it was 10 years ago, as far as the alarms go. Can you talk about how that intertwines with everything?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, you can get detectors now. You can get combined detectors that are combined smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, or you can get standalone carbon monoxide detectors. And those detectors work with an electromechanical sensor that basically picks up carbon monoxide in air. It sends an electrical impulse, and then based upon the reaction, the chemical reaction, it determines how many parts per million are in the air of carbon monoxide. And when it gets to a hazardous level, then that detector will go off. Anybody that has gas appliances should have carbon monoxide detectors. And what a lot of people don't know is, if you have a golf cart and you're charging a golf cart in your garage, you should have a carbon monoxide detector, because the byproduct when you charge those lead acid batteries is carbon monoxide. And it's colorless, it's odorless, it's tasteless, it's a poisonous gas, and it's extremely flammable when it mixes with air. So, we've had some people where they've had carbon monoxide come in from the garage because it wasn't well ventilated. They didn't know, and it was producing more than they thought. And they start getting a headache or having issues. And sure enough, we go out there and those parts per million are really high. And the real dangerous difficulty is if that happens while you're sleeping, you just don't wake up. It's one of the byproducts of carbon monoxide is it makes you sleepy. It binds with the hemoglobin in your blood 200 to 300 times faster than oxygen. So basically, you suffocate without knowing that you're suffocating, because you're still breathing. You're just not getting enough oxygen to your lungs and to your body to do what it's supposed to do.
I'm going to couple this now with cold weather that we've been having, space heaters, different things like that, and give that warning shot to people when it comes to the space heaters and how to use them, what to use inside, what to use outside, and the kind of the do's and don'ts.
So electric space heaters are a lot safer than they used to be. Most of them now have, if they tip over, they automatically shut off. If something's too close to them, they generate too much heat, they'll shut off. But I don't ever like to rely on that. It's kind of like the iron at your house. Most irons now, if you leave it plugged in, it'll turn off after a certain period of time. And, those operate off of direct current, and it's just continually heating. So if something were to fail and there's an issue and you're not home, I really don't like space heaters. I know lots of people use them, and if you don't have anything else and you have to, then our recommendation is you want to make sure that you keep a wide area out in front and around that space heater. You don't want it right directly up against the wall, because not only are you heating the room, but then you're heating the things that are adjacent to it. So over time, even though it may not seem like it's causing an issue, if you have it right next to a wall, what it's doing over time is it's actually drying that wall out. It's drying out, if it's, say it's wood, it's taking the moisture out of it. And eventually, that could heat to a point where it could become combustible and cause a problem. So we always recommend space heaters are good. And if they're necessary and you need to use one, that you stay in the room where it's being used, that it's occupied, and what's kind of going on, so that you don't leave. And certainly we don't recommend leaving them running when you leave the house.
And Robin threw out there electric fireplaces. The advancement of what the fireplaces have gone to now, with the kind of the faux fireplaces that push heat out. Have we been seeing a difference between the newer product line and the older product line as far as not causing fires like they used to?
So I think the big issue with those two is again, it's proximity to something else that's combustible. So basically the electric fireplaces, that's what it is. It's kind of a space heater. They have a little more, they have safety features designed in them as well and things like that. But if you have an electric fireplace and you throw, a towel down in front of it, or you have, carpet right up next to it where those vents are coming out and stuff like that, that can cause an issue. So you want to make sure that it's up off the ground, and that it's not really right next to something that's hot. And a good test is if you're gonna have something close to it, just hold your hand there for a period of time. If you're gonna hold your hand there without your hand getting hot, then probably whatever's in that area is not going to be an issue either. So,
well, I'm gonna slide into the video side of things that you had brought up. I'm gonna go ahead and hit play and
before you start, let me intro this a little bit. So one of the things that came up today was, as we talk about fire safety and holiday safety tips. If you have a live tree in your house, you want to keep it watered every day. You want to make sure that it stays wet. And in a moment, you're going to see this video that you'll see how important that is, and how quickly a Christmas tree can really just wreak havoc on your entire home. That fire progresses so quickly that if it were to occur while you're sleeping and you're in the same room or an adjacent room, it could be very difficult for you to get out. So the newer trees now that are fake trees are fire resistant, but if you have an old tree and love a live fire tree, that's okay. But just make sure that you keep it moist. When you bring it home, make sure you do a new cut on the base so that it can absorb that moisture. Once the needles start falling off of significant, or certainly once they start turning brown, you got to get that tree out of the house. If you've got electric lights on it, that's one of the main causes and can be a big contributing factor to these types of fires. So in a minute, you'll see how quickly a fire like that progresses, and it's scary dangerous. This is from the National Fire Protection Association. They did a little demonstration here. So they simulated a spark in this tree, you'll see, and you'll see how quickly this, causes this room to flash. 3, 2, 1, ignition. Okay. So you see that little spark in there, and
yep,
off it goes.
It doesn't take too long for this tree to go up, does it?
It really doesn't. And now, if you don't know much about fire, all of that smoke at the ceiling level, that's fuel. That fuel now, as you can see, it catches fire as it heats up. You see how quickly that's progressing. Now that's spreading not just through that room, but that's spreading to other areas of the house. And as this goes down, it's going to heat up the chair adjacent to it, which is going to off gas. That's going to begin to catch fire. And you can see how quickly this becomes, a very, very dangerous fire.
And that's amazing that we actually are sending firemen into that, let alone you could be sleeping when all this goes on if you leave your tree on at night, correct?
Absolutely. So it's, again, the importance of smoke detectors. So think about it, even if you had a smoke detector there and it wakes you up in the middle of the night when that fire starts, you don't have a lot of time to get out. So you need to make sure that you have an exit plan, that your kids know how to get out, and that you can do something very, very quickly, because, 10, 15 seconds into that fire starting, you going to look for a fire extinguisher or something like that. That's not it. Everybody needs to be thinking about how to get out of the house and call 911. A lot of times those fires, they progress so quickly, especially with a Christmas tree. The amount of fuel and heat that a Christmas tree puts out is just unbelievable.
Now, and I'm going to ask this because I think relatively to big cities, we're we're pretty good as far as not having incidences like this. Um, and I know you guys are actively out there really pushing education and trying to get this information out to people. And I believe you're effective at it because we don't hear the fire trucks doing the runs like we used to when I was a kid. Um, you know, can you talk about the difference between I think even 10, 12, 15 years ago, and what you guys have done to educate the public on all these things now?
I think education, and not just for us in the public, but even industry wide. That's a big part of what we do. We have a whole division in the fire department that's dedicated to fire prevention, and everything from doing plans reviews when a new project comes in to make sure that all those fire safety features are in place, so that when you go out and visit a commercial establishment, all those things are the way they should, which maximize your safety, and it also maximizes safety for our personnel if they respond to a fire, and then educating the community. I actually got some information from a gentleman this week about school programs, and next year we're planning on kind of changing a little bit. Right now, over years, it's kind of morphed to the schools call us and they arrange these, different things for us to come out and do. And I said, we really kind of want to take control of that and go back to every school for appropriate age, kids, making sure that they're all getting the same messaging. And so, we want to make sure that nobody's missing certain things, so that, kindergarten and first grade is learning about stop, drop, and roll. And as they get older, exit drills in the home, and then, some of the other safety things. So I think that we have done a good job with community education. A lot of the fire trucks and a lot of the sirens and sounds you hear now are emergency medical calls, vehicle accidents. We do all hazards. So it's a lot of other things. We still have a fair number of fires, but part of it too is, the sprawl. So we cover, almost 105 square miles right now. So it's kind of compartmentalized. Whereas if you go into a bigger city, you're hearing those sirens, all day long, because it's very, very concentrated. So we stay relatively busy, but the largest amount of our calls, thankfully, are not, residential and commercial home fires, but they do occur.
Robin brought it up, but I know this product is out there, but you when you do the educational side of things, I know it's out there because most cities have them, the coloring books, the educational tools that you guys provide out, whether it be crayons, so that they can color and learn as they go through the process. But can you talk about that community engagement that you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have all of those things. And when we go out to the schools or anytime we do an event, we have coloring books, and we have, rulers, and we have stickers, and, all kinds of things that talk about those safety messages. So we know the information is getting out there. We just want to be a little more direct and consistent about it to make sure that we don't miss somebody. I think our message does get out there, but there are times that people miss it. So when we do our open house, which is coming up in January, of course, we'll have all that stuff to give out to people. And anytime we go out to the schools, we give the teachers those coloring books and a lot of those materials. That's where we buy that. They go home, they talk to their parents about it. We just want to make sure that they're hearing it from us, and sometimes that some of that doesn't get lost in translation. So just to be a little bit more focused. But yeah, Robin's right. We have all that stuff, and we do concentrate all that stuff. Kids love to get the little giveaways and the coloring books and the things like that. And so yeah, that's one of the ways that we send that message. Absolutely.
And Sean brought this up, and I'll give some kudos out. I wasn't able to attend this year, but my wife was actually in the parade with my truck with I believe it was Kiwanis that she was pulling the float, and so they had a good time. But you had a great turnout this year. I guess over 70 floats in line out there, and Sean says that his granddaughter loved the Santa fire truck. So in the Poinsettia Parade. So great job to you guys for doing that. And, it's just another spotlight though, for the fire department, isn't it?
Yeah, and we that's a good opportunity. It's a good event for us to be able to go out and engage with the community a little bit. So the firefighters come out, their families come out, so we walk the parade. One of our firefighters this year designed the float, and he was the Grinch. So we had a Grinch float. Some of our firefighters' kids were little. Gosh, I'm going to forget her name now. Suhu, yeah, and. So we had a float, and then we also had our brand new engine, which is just about to get online. We just received, so that was out there on the parade, and then the last one, of course, was the ladder truck with Santa riding on top. So it was always great to interact with him, and it was great to get pictures with Santa and the Grinch together. It was really, really exciting. But yeah, it's a good opportunity to go out and talk to some of the community along the parade route. A lot of times we don't get to stop and answer questions and things, but certainly at the end, kind of everybody gathers, and it's nice to be able to answer questions, say hello, and do our thing. So yes.
So a lot of things have changed in our industry over the last 4 years. There's been a bigger push on solar panels and a push for electric cars that are out there. We've all heard about the potential fire hazard from those vehicles, and even with the flooding we've had scenarios that play out up and down our coastline where those with electric vehicles have kind of run into some issues along the way. But, we're also heading into season, and I'm going to kind of couple all these things together because they kind of go into the eco-friendly type things. But now we're talking about plugging in RVs because you're traveling down, and we're going to plug in RVs. And are there any safety things that you would recommend if one, like the RV showing up, it's been a year maybe or 8-9 months since you've been here and we've had some different weather. Is there something that you would recommend they do before they plug in?
There's so many different systems, operating systems, and manufacturers, and everything out there. And the one thing I can tell you is with the new lithium batteries, there's so many wonderful benefits, but there's also some concerns with those. So, after the storms came through this year, multiple hurricanes and storms, it wasn't just vehicles. We had houses that were flooded. There was quite a few structure fires, and I mean actual structure fires in Sarasota County that were caused by lithium batteries. And it wasn't all cars. Some of them were the tools. Almost every tool that I have in my house, probably you and yours. Some of these people, they have lithium batteries, and so once those are exposed to especially salt water, a chemical reaction begins to occur that breaks that down. A lot of people, they don't know is those batteries are in a sealed compartment. And if there's anything that fractures that seal, lithium and the chemicals in there are what's called air reactive and water reactive. So if water touches them, they automatically ignite fire. If air touches them, they automatically ignite fire. So as you know, how do we put fires out? Typically we put water on. So when you put water on a lithium fire, you actually make it burn stronger and faster. And that's why those fires are so dangerous for, us. You'll see us fighting some of those car fires sometimes, and people go, man, they can't put it out. Well, it just takes an extreme amount of water, almost to a level where you could submerge something to cool it enough to be able to stop that process. And a lot of times, even after you put the fire out, if it's a vehicle, you put it on a tow truck and they're driving down the road and the wind going through ignites that car all over again because it's pushing into that battery. So it's created some interesting problems for fire departments, throughout the country, and tow companies and some other stuff. And in our homes, I don't want people to become paranoid about it, but it's just something they need to be aware of, that if batteries do become, exposed to water, especially salt water, that you need to leave them outside until you can properly dispose of them. You can call solid waste, hazardous waste, at the dump. We'll take those things, but you got to figure out a way to get them there, and you want to make sure that you do that safely during the time. So, if you do have something, you've been gone for a year, back to your question, I'm sorry, I got off a little bit, but
you did great, because I'm going to dive a different direction here in a second, but we'll couple it back together.
When we have those things, whether it's a vehicle or a tool or something like that, most of us have used them enough times that if something's not acting right, if the charger, doesn't seem to be acting right, or the battery is, intermittent, or the lights aren't showing correctly, if there's something that indicates there's a problem, then the best thing to do is just get hold of somebody, get it to the menu, either get hold of the manufacturer or get it back to the dealership or something, have them come check it out before you leave it plug in and just see what happens, So, as I said, there are a lot of safety features in those things, and then those to heat them up and to charge them up. But again, you're relying on that safety feature to catch something. Solar panels are great in some cases, and they create some issues for us sometimes because now you have stored energy, and if we show up on a fire and we shut power down to the house and we didn't realize there's batteries in the garage that are storing energy, some of the that lines can still be energized. So there's certain things that we have to do to make sure that we lock out, tag out to keep our firefighters safe, make sure there's not backfeed from FP&L and some other things. So it creates some interesting situations that we have to be careful for.
So I'm gonna jump in here a little bit and talk about the past and the current and the future, because all of the technology and all the things that we're talking about and all the changes that we see out here, that also has to be an educational piece back to the fire department and those who protect us. Can you talk about the training and because all of this, this isn't just, hey, we walked into something new. You guys are learning this preemptively
Sure.
in a lot of situations. Can you talk about how you guys handle that and the educational side that you embrace at the fire department?
Sure. And I'll just start with the basics. If you go back 30 or 40 years ago and you just think about just basic building components and the things that you had in a residential home, everything was made out of wood, paper, cotton, and so when a fire were to occur, sometimes it's 10, 12 minutes until a room reaches a point where it's starting to get hot enough for things to flash over to where you get to dangerous fire conditions, with the exception of having a Christmas tree. Now, what I will tell you is the Christmas tree is a great example to look at because now with all of the synthetics that we have in our homes, if a fire starts, some synthetic materials that we have that our furniture is made out of, they begin to off gas, it's called. So as things heat up, they off gas. Okay. And so the things that some of these synthetic materials and furnitures are letting off, plastics on our countertops and things like that, they're letting off gases that when they break down, they become what's called ladder fuels in air. Some of those, the ignition point of some of those things is as low as 120 degrees. And so now you have this fire that just can build exponentially faster and reach a flashover stage. Sometimes we can get to flashover stage now in 2 minutes, as opposed to what used to be, 8 or 9 or 10 minutes. And in conjunction with that, all the building materials that they use now, it's all lightweight truss construction. It's, so buildings don't withstand fire for as long as they used to. You used to be able to put an old wood construction home where the trusses were hand built, and you could put somebody on the roof for 30 minutes with a fire underneath it. It's probably not coming down. Now we have a very short and limited period of time. To complicate that, you put tiles up on the roofs now, so you think about the amount of weight load it is on it. And if you've ever seen a truss constructed, you ever seen those metal panels that they punch into the truss to hold it all together? Do you know how those work? So basically, when they punch those in there, there's little tines that just go into the wood, and the only reason they hold the truss together is based upon the moisture content of the wood. So if you think about it, it's in your attic. What's it doing every year?
Drying out.
Something along, it's drying out, which means every year your trusses become a little bit weaker. Now, I'm simplifying this to exaggerate it over time, but now imagine a fire in your attic that's heating up. So that with increased weight load on the roof, imminent failure is coming. So learning those things, how those components work, how they break down, where the fire is, all of those things are so important into what we do, how we're going to attack the fire, how we make sure that we can get in and get somebody out. So we change our tactics on how we do certain things. We used to always put somebody on the roof every time because you want to vent upward and let all that smoke and gas out. Now we still do it, but now we choose when it's proper to do it and when not, because of that roof load and because of that lightweight truss construction. It's much more dangerous for our firefighters to get up there. The other piece of it, a lot of that is education of tactics, changing certain things. How do we attack those fires? How do we affect rescues? We've always said and recommend that when you sleep at night, you sleep with your door closed. And there's a reason for that. If there's a fire somewhere else in the house, you can have a tenable space for a lot longer in your bedroom with your door closed than if your door's open, because that fire and that smoke is going to immediately communicate into a room that has an open door. And as I said before, when you have smoke in the air, the blacker the smoke, the more amount of carbon and the more fuel is in air, basically. And all it's waiting for is to get heated up enough to get to an ignition point. So when your smoke is traveling through your house, that's where your fire's going. So if you have that door closed, you're buying yourself time. Put a towel under the door, you can stay in there. And we change our tactics now. We always used to, go in through the front door, go in through a side door and things like that. Well, now a lot of times you get a house that's under significant fire attack. In the old days, someone might have written some things off, but we do what's called VEIS, vent, enter, isolate, and search. So, it may look like half of the house is engulfed in fire, but we're going to windows right adjacent to the fire room. We're busting, going in through that window, making sure that door is closed, doing a quick search of that room, and then getting out and then going, around the corner to the next room and to the next room. So instead of going in, fighting the fire, now that's while people are fighting the fire as well. But instead of going in, fighting the fire, and then breaking off and doing a search, a lot of times now we're doing that search from the outside. It's just as quick. It's a little bit of a different tactic, but we get in there and hopefully affect a rescue. So, so much has changed on how we do those things. They used to tell us certain types of nozzles would push fire through a house, and it's just really not. It's really not true. And over time, science has proven what our tactics. As I said, 30 years ago when I got into this, it was put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and honestly, people didn't really view firefighters as a profession. It was a trade, but they didn't. The police department got with the game a little bit faster than we did. They wanted to be recognized as a professional trade. They began recognizing that they needed to educate themselves, get college, do certain things. The fire department was probably 10 years on the heel of that, which is why the police department used to get a lot more grants than we did. But they were good. And so, now it's what we do it is a trade, but it's a career, and you have to be educated. You have to continue to look at, not only what's going on now, but what's coming in the future, what changes are coming. So we do things differently. Our fire apparatus changes, every year. When we order fire apparatus, they're changing the standards to help make us safer and make the vehicle safer. But with that comes unintended consequences. They become more costly. Things happen. Same thing. Construction changes. The materials change. So I tell anybody that wants to get in the fire service, if you've got in the fire service just to relax, you probably got the wrong career, because we are continually educating and training ourselves to make sure that we're on that front edge of knowing what's going on. Our personnel do a phenomenal job, to do all of those things and make sure that whatever we encounter, we understand what those risks are and that we're handling.
And Chuck brought this up, and it's something that there's other factors. So you've got resins and different composite material that's out there now too. We talked about the batteries, we talked about the other things, but the resins, just the fumes that come off the resins now, you guys are rushing in to some unknowns almost all the time in a fire, because you don't know what's involved until you get inside. But can you talk about that aspect for us as the citizens who may have things inside the home that maybe shouldn't have been inside the home, and how to handle those types of things?
Some of that, and that's why it's so important. We have always taught that if a fire happens in the house, the most important thing is get outside and call 911. Let us come and handle it. Police officers quite often get on scene faster than we do because they're in a singular car. They're already on the road. So we get toned out to the call. We have to go to the apparatus, put our equipment on. We still turn out very fast. Our people practice that all of the time. They do a great job. But, police officers used to sometimes run into a house and try and use a fire extinguisher to try and put it out quickly. Or, a mother comes out of the house, brings the kids out, and then goes back in for the dog. That's so much more dangerous now than it was previously because of all those things we talked about, because of those composites and plastics and resins. What's in the air now, one breath of it can kill you. If you look at old FDNY pictures and even old movies, and you just look at firefighters that were breathing smoke, and that was one of the origins, of the big mustaches on firefighters, was they actually used to wet their mustache. They would grow it down over their lip, and they would actually filter breathe through that. When you're just breathing smoke from paper and wood, you're still exposed to carbon monoxide. It's still not a great idea. I'd never recommend it, but you weren't getting some of those chemicals that would kill you with one breath. Now, it's so important, and we teach our personnel how important it is not just to wear their air pack, but to know all the emergency procedures if there's a failure, and if somebody's running out of air, if they're trapped. We train rapid intervention crews and things like that. How quickly can we go in, get somebody, give them air? Are they trapped? How do we get them out? If they're not trapped, they just need air. We tell them, if you're in a safe space, lock down, go to your quiet place, conserve your air. We'll come and get you. We'll bring you new air. We can do a rapid transfer. We can change their bottle out. We can do all kinds of things, but we don't want them to breathe any of that. So it's so important. It's just as important for our firefighters as it is for the community. Once you get outside, stay outside. Call that 911. Let us come. If there's somebody in the house, like I said, hopefully that door is closed or something like that, to buy them some time, because that's our job to go in and get them.
So I'm going to lead in here because it's something that Robin talked about a little bit in her statement, but we've talked about it. You and I have talked about this over and over again, and the value of it, and it's the response time that we have here in the city of Northport, and the pride that I believe your whole entire department takes in to keeping those numbers low. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have benchmarks, and we measure them constantly all the time on how quickly we should get out of the station, how quickly it takes for us to get from the station to a certain location. We have benchmarks, and we track, how many calls does a certain unit get? How much available time do they have? It's called unit hour utilization. And we take all those things in conjunction. And then as the city grows and as the population begins to expand, we start looking at when those response times begin to stretch a little bit to those outside levels. We start to look and say, well, can that be fixed by adding additional units? Because the distance was okay, but we didn't have a unit available, or is it time to add a new fire station? And so there's a whole lot more that goes into it. That's kind of simplified down, but it's something that we look at constantly. And so when you see us talking about a new fire station coming, the reason for that is to manage not just the number of calls in that area, but also to make sure as an area populates that we can get there in a reasonable period of time to do certain things, because fire grows exponentially, every minute. And medical emergencies, of course, if you have a heart attack or you have a stroke and there's your brain or your heart are cut off from oxygen, there's a very limited period of time until it begins doing damage to the heart muscle or to the brain tissue, and then eventually death of the heart muscle or death of the brain tissue. And so that response time is very important. And then when we get there, that we're extremely competent in what we do, that we show up and we're good. Our mission statement, I've talked about it a lot, and I've said a lot of people don't believe in mission statements, but exceptional public service in a safe, compassionate, professional manner. And exceptional, I tell people when Robin, if God forbid she ever had to call 911, or anybody, when they call 911 in the community, they're not saying, hey, just send me a couple of your average people when they can get here, right? They want people to be there absolutely as quickly as they can. They want them to be incredibly professional. They want them to be kind and good at what they do, and they want to be better than anybody else. And that's what our people work really, really hard to try and deliver every day. I'm very proud that our members have embraced that concept, and they continue trying to push that edge. And as we bring new people on, we're continuing to push that philosophy, and our community should be, I think, pretty proud of how hard they work to do that, because it's a lot. And I will tell you, to cover 104 square miles, as anybody that knows Northport, our east-west corridors are limited, and then our north-south, corridors, a lot of those are broke up with canals and things like that. And so sometimes there's an area that maybe could use a station, but you can only have so many stations and things. You have to find that balance. You have to look and see how can we stretch our resources, do certain things to maximize the benefit of all of those things. And I will tell you an interesting statistic. I don't know if you and I talked about it last time, but it came up recently. And ROSC is an acronym for return of spontaneous circulation. So somebody that has a cardiac arrest event, we measure and track those people that we get ROSC on. So in other words, we show up and they're pulseless and they're not breathing. And then when we take them to the hospital, they have a pulse. We'll drop them off at the hospital. They have a pulse and they are breathing. That ROSC rate nationwide, I think right now is around 27%. We are, I think at last count, we were at about 53%. So that's a pretty significant difference. A lot of that is response times, are people being very, very technically proficient. And you guys in the community also deserve a shout out, because anybody that gets CPR or gets an AED before we get on scene, all you're doing is increasing their chance for survival. So it's, this whole link of survival, and this, an important piece of that is the chain of the community, and then the 911 system, and then the hospital system. And one of the other things we're beginning to track now is how many of those people that went into the hospital, how many of them walk out. And that rate is a lot lower than how many drop off, because lots of people have comorbidities. There's other complications and things like that. But I will also say, and I don't want to reveal the numbers yet, we're starting to look at this, but I think even in that category, we're double the national average of the people that walk out of the hospital. So that's something that the community, should feel good about, and certainly our personnel are very proud of trying to maintain and continually try to improve this.
Northport proud, baby. Northport proud.
Absolutely.
We're heading into the holidays, and Sean Kirkpatrick and even Chuck English is talking about the fire season, and I think the caution that people should have, because we've been pretty dry on top of everything else, and this time of year we get an ungodly amount of fireworks going off in the air. The caution of this whole thing right now. Can you talk about that? Because we've got about 14 minutes left. Sure. And we've covered a lot of different topics, but we're heading into July, or January 1st, July. We're going to be in July before you know it, but we're heading into January, and we're not going to have a show between now and then. And kind of talk about the Christmas fireworks, the kids being home for a couple of weeks, and all the safety factors that go into New Year's Eve.
So let me, and if I get off track and don't get back to that, please pull me back. But let me start inside the house. So we'll go still Christmas time, and then we'll work our way towards January, because there was a couple of things I wanted to make sure to cover. There's amazing candles out there right now that are battery operated candles. They flicker. They don't cause any issues or danger. Some people, my wife included, God bless her, I love her to death, she loves candles. She lights them all day long. I walk behind her and I blow them out. But candles, are dangerous. But if you have a candle lit, minimum space needs to be 12 inches around it, not close to anything. Certainly you don't want to have anything above it. If your wife is like mine and she's got to have candles, you just want to make sure, put them in a place where they can't get knocked over. But battery operated candles are amazing now. And certainly candles within 3 feet of a Christmas tree. You don't want any open flame within 3 feet of a Christmas tree. All right. So that's fireplace and candles. So, keep that in mind. Think about holidays are coming up. Everybody's making big meals, cooking tips, just normal, simple stuff that sometimes we get busy and we forget. Turn those pots and pans handles away from the stove so your kids can't get them. Make sure they can't grab hold of that oven and pull it out. If you are cooking something in the oven and it overflows, most ovens, when they reach a certain temperature, they kind of auto lock. So if it overflows and that catches fire and there's a fire in your oven, call 911, but don't try and open your oven. Some people try and pry that open because they want to get a fire extinguisher in there. Fire in your oven is the best place for it to be, in your oven. So call us. If it doesn't go out on its own when we get there, we will handle it. But best thing that happened in 95% of the time when those happen in your oven, turn the stove off, and typically it's going to go out on its own. It's going to make a bunch of smoke, make a mess, but it's not going to start a fire. But if you do open that, or that lock fails and you try and open that oven up, it's going to transfer into the air and you're going to have a mess in the kitchen. They make these great fryers now that you can put them on the counter in your kitchen and do turkeys and all kinds of stuff. Manufacturer says they're safe. I will just tell you, I'm not a big fan. I have a turkey fryer. It's a kitchen mounted one that you can put on your kitchen counter, and I still use it in the driveway because if the driveway catches on fire, everybody's going to be okay. you just want to be careful. Any water that's introduced to that, any moisture from that turkey, if it's not dried off, if it's got any frozen parts left in it, when you put that in the oil and it expands, you're going to have, it's really dangerous. So keep that in mind. Check your smoke detectors, check your fire extinguishers, work on all that stuff as we go outside and get towards the new year. Fireworks. So this is where, usually it's the police department that gets to be the bad guys. This is where people kind of hem and haw. They don't love us, but I will tell you, although the state statute changed in some areas for fireworks, they are still not legal. If it flies in the air and goes bang in the city of Northport, it's not legal even on the certain holidays that they say it is. We had a law in place that was more stringent than the state statute, and it actually supersedes what was changed. I believe Governor DeSantis changed it. We can't go out and actively impact, influence, and hold everybody accountable that uses fireworks. It just can't happen. 4th of July, New Year's, people are going to do it. And we understand that, but they also have to understand what that risk is. If you have dry brush, a lot of our homes are wildland urban interface. There's undeveloped properties near to them or adjacent to them, and those things that fly in the air and go bang, they're on fire. And sometimes when they land and they're still hot, they can start a secondary fire. People should understand that if that can be tracked back to you as the person that lit it, you could be found liable. It happens. Insurance companies work real hard. People say, "Oh yeah, I saw the neighbor like this. It went over there," and they will come after you. And those are never pleasant. So we of course recommend almost every holiday there are fireworks displays that are put on by professionals, and that's what they pay them to do. They're checked out by the fire marshal to make sure they're as safe as they possibly can be, and we typically have resources on scene to keep those fires and check if they were to occur. So the best thing to do is go view them at a professional display somewhere that it can be. Sprinklers or sparklers, I want to say 1600 degrees. And it kind of freaks me out all the time. You see people, they give those sparklers, they let them off. The first thing they do is they hand them to a kid. I mean, you're giving a kid a lightsaber. They touch themselves, they touch somebody else. It absolutely is going to be a burn. They can cause horrible eye injuries, horrible burns, things like that. So we're my wife, I was always a safety guy growing up. My wife called me Safety Scott. I was always the one telling the kids no. She was like, "Oh, go ahead, they'll be fine." So finding that balance in the middle is good, and just being aware. If you are going to do something like that, make sure that you have a bucket of water close by somewhere that they can put the sparkler in there. Young kids should not have sparklers. Let the adult hold it for them and let them see it and do certain things. So there's some safeguards you can put in place and still enjoy those things if you want to, but make them as safe as possible.
Awesome.
I think I covered your stuff.
You did. And you know what I want to do again real quick, because we've got some new listeners real quick. I want to show that video again before we end the show.
Okay.
And because I think there's some value in it.
So we'll go back for the new listeners. This is a tree that's not been watered. It's dried out a little bit. And you're going to see a spark happen in the middle. There's no accelerant in this tree at all. All right. 3, 2, 1. There's the spark. So you watch how quickly this fire goes. This is just a regular Christmas tree. There's not anything fancy on it. There's nothing that made this fire get big or fast. That smoke that gets produced there is as you can see it, that's fuel in the air. It turns into flames immediately as soon as heated up. Imagine that in your family room. Your bedrooms are right off the family room. How quickly something like that can occur at nighttime, and how quickly you could have problems. So make sure you have working smoke detectors. Make sure that you sleep with your doors closed. When you put up string lights on your Christmas tree, if they're frayed, get rid of them, buy new ones. If intermittently they're not working and then they are working, it's probably a problem. So as you can see, when those fires occur, a lot of times if there's people in the vicinity, it doesn't turn out well, and they cause major property loss and property damage very, very quickly. So, a lot of people that die in fires don't die. They don't die because they got burned. A lot of people that die in fires die because of smoke inhalation. So if you look how fast that fire grew and how quickly that smoke traveled, if you're in a bedroom and the door's open, you don't have smoke detectors, or the batteries haven't been checked on them, you can imagine how quickly that could become a catastrophic fire.
So check your batteries before you put the tree up.
Absolutely. Yes.
And make sure they're working.
Check them once a week. So, and I can tell you, they have some interesting ones now. If you're in an older home, which I am, my house was built in the very early 80s. So I don't have a hardwired system in my house, but they have a pretty neat system now, and it works off of two things. It works off of Wi-Fi connectivity, but if that fails, there's also radio signal connectivity from detector to detector. I have 12 detectors in my house. So every bedroom has a detector. Every hallway has a detector. Obviously, you don't want to put one right in your kitchen. You put it outside of that. But I have one in my garage. I even have one in my attic. And they all talk to each other. They all work in series, just like the newer systems. And they cost a little bit of money, but safety is, a paramount. And you can buy them in blocks of 6 or something like that if you need them. Most homes, if you put 6 up, you're going to be okay. You'll cover your bedrooms and everything. And I have extras.
2 or 3 trips to McDonald's covers it now.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
We've got 5 minutes left, but
Sure.
The importance of celebrating Christmas, being part of it. Elaine wanted me to mention with the Kiwanis that there's the cards out front.
Oh, they do an amazing job out on city. Yes, out of the city green, the Christmas cards that go up. Kiwanis has done that for years and years and years, and it's always awesome. If members of the community haven't seen them, please go check them out.
The tags on the tree at Perkins, the Ohio State Buckeye Group, we've pulled tags, and we're sponsoring Kids for Christmas. We did that last year. We're doing it again this year. I would highly recommend stopping by Perkins and pulling a tag and sponsoring a Kid for Christmas. It's a great way to educate your young ones on giving to someone else. I just, the Kiwanis Group does an amazing job for our community and trying to make sure that the kids in our community are taken care of. They're always looking forward. I'm going to throw it back at you for a second, though, because, we've got Shop with a Cop with the police department, and they do a wonderful job. Talk about what your department does this time of year as far as the community and drawing that back together.
So all told, our firefighters, our administration, there's a lot of different things that go on. One of the things is we have a benevolent association. Every member puts money from their paycheck into an account every month. We all pay into it. Half that money goes to a catastrophic illness fund for our firefighters and families. The other half of that is supposed to be used in the community. So, we help sponsor sports teams and things like that. We do holiday meals at Christmas time and Thanksgiving and Easter for families that are in need. Social services, we typically will go to them and see if we can adopt families, and same things what you're talking about, find children that need toys or that aren't as well off that we can help out with. We just recently did a food drive at Walmart in partnership with Awaken Church, the food pantry. We actually collected food for the food pantry, and we almost filled an ambulance. It was actually amazing. Every year we do that. We do it typically about the same time as the police do Shop with a Cop. And instead of, doing toys, we do the food. It's amazing how our community responds to that and how thoughtful our community is. You can tell some people when they come out, they're making it day to day themselves, and they still come out with a bag of stuff to give us to help somebody else in need. It's amazing. I can't say enough things about it. So we try and partner with the community to do those things. All of our fire station locations, we're still collecting toys for tots. And so, and then we're also collecting social services doing a drive for clothing. So we're also collecting clothing from kindergarten all the way up through high school years, either new or gently used, that we can help give back to members in the community. So there's always a lot going on, and we're always trying to give back because we're very grateful for the support this community gives us. And it's just one of the many ways we want to kind of partner with them to give back. So,
well, your opportunity to give a shout out, and then we're going to go off the air because my battery is going to go dead. But give a shout out. Merry Christmas to you and your family and all of the citizens of Northport and all the city staff. They do an amazing job. It's your ball.
I just say blessings, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to the entire community. all of my fire family and our family outside, John, to you, all the sponsors, everybody, we really, really are blessed and so thankful to be a part of this community and have the opportunity to serve. And we appreciate you helping us share our message and get that out. And thank you for the people that wrote in today and asked questions, and that helps, spark some dialogue and get questions out there too. So I look forward to continuing to do this with you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All
This
right.
is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 FM, your emergency broadcasting network for the citizens of Northport, saying Merry Christmas to you. Be safe. Check your batteries on your fire alarms and make sure everything is working before you plug your tree in, and unplug it at night when you go to bed. Talk to you soon. Be blessed.
Thanks, John.